Greetings, it's me, Karen Romano Young, back to read another chapter of A Girl, a Raccoon, and the Midnight Moon, with pictures by Jessixa Bagley, published by Chronicle Books in 2020. Chapter 15, Apologies for My Daughter. September 22nd to 23rd. On Friday night, Bruce came to dinner. Pearl took her veggie burger into the bedroom, along with her vocabulary homework and Pinkie Pie. Pinkie Pie by Eleanor Estes, illustrated by Edward Ardizini, Harcourt Brace and World, 1951. A good book about a cat who writes a story about solving a mystery and who knows a thing or two about drama. Cats writing, that's a good one. I'd like to see a cat write Pearl a note. She worked, then read, then thought about raccoons solving mysteries, then eavesdropped enough to know that there were some interesting discussions about whether Alice's baby was going to come before Thanksgiving. The silences were also interesting. But then she heard Bruce say it had been Mr. Gulliver who had told the real estate men that the library building might be available for repurposing, and she had to clap her hands over her mouth to keep from shouting out. All along, she'd assumed that Mr. Bull and Mr. Dozer had gotten their idea from the first Moon story. Her mother only said calmly, well, some developer would have figured it out eventually, the way things are going with developers moving into old neighborhoods all over the city. And kicking out all the old neighbors, said Bruce. Gully is one of the old neighbors, said Mom. He ought to know better than to mess with me. Pearl waited, but the conversation moved on to black versus green tea at this time of night, and she didn't get to hear what her mother intended to do about Gully, but she thought about it until she fell asleep. She wasn't able to do anything about it until the next morning at the library, when she casually said she was going to Gully's and slipped out. She was on the curb in front of the library, striding away, when Mom called down from the third floor, "Pearl, wait!" A sidebar about urban legends. The most famous urban legend set in New York is the one about the alligators in the sewers. Like other legends, see Chapter 5, it's a story that gets larger with retellings. People used to be stupider about taking animals out of their natural habitats. Rich people vacationing in Florida could buy baby alligators and take them home as pets, keep them in aquariums or even a spare bathtub. But sometimes they'd get sick of the pets and flush them down the toilet. Sometimes the bathtub wouldn't have enough water to keep the alligators content and they'd escape. Legend has these alligators growing to huge sizes, feeding on rats and garbage. Truth is, some alligators really did wind up in the sewer system of New York City, which is extensive, and so sometimes these sewer alligators would actually surface in the middle of the city. All this is a long way of saying that there's a grain of truth in every story, even the most bizarre fiction. By M.A.M. Mom emerged from the library, ran down the steps, and hurried across the street to Pearl. "Why can't I go alone?" Pearl asked quietly. "Gully was the one who told those construction guys to come check out the old library." "Oh, Pearl, I know I'm not supposed to eavesdrop, but you guys were talking so loud I couldn't not hear. Gully can't keep on telling stories about us. He's trying to wreck everything with his lies," said Pearl. "So you're going over there to accuse him? That's not the kind of drama we need." It was like Mom had been hearing all those thoughts about drama that Pearl had been having. She almost asked, "What kind do we need?" But Mom said, "You can't just go confronting people, Pearl girl. That's not the way to get things done. You have to learn how to make the most impact. Be diplomatic, not get yourself and the rest of the enterprise in trouble because you're mad at," she lowered her voice and angled her head away from Gully's window, "a certain busybody neighbor. As I'm sure you heard me say last night, some developer would have had this idea soon anyway." Mom put a hand on her mother's arm. "So what are you going to do?" "Diplomacy," said Mom. "Watch and learn." She led the way into the store. "Good morning, Mr. Gulliver," said Mom with false cheer. "Maybe for you," said Gully. "It's practically lunchtime." He opened every day at 7:30 for the rush hour traffic and the kids on their way to school. He kept to that schedule even on Saturdays. "Gully, you're just the expert I've been needing to ask," Mom said. "Don't you think that if the library were open in the evenings, there would be more foot traffic on Lancaster Avenue?" Was this what Mom meant by diplomacy, asking an opinion where one was not needed? Sure enough, Gully puffed up like a pigeon on a cold day. He liked being asked his opinion. You think there'd be more foot traffic? And it would be safer, said Mom, the way things used to be. Those were Gully's favorite words. We remember, he said to Mom. He smiled down at Pearl, his voice almost gentle for once. He had been running his store since Mom was a little kid living on 7th Avenue, and he was friendly to her because they both remembered that time. Mom was wistful about when her parents and brother lived in the neighborhood. Gully was nostalgic for the days with more white people, and not such poor ones either. Now he said, safer would improve my marketing, that's for sure. You think I'd make money at night with all these punks and let's call them newcomers around here? Why not if the library brought in customers, said Mom, till 9 at least. There'd be the old hustle and bustle on the avenue. But the moment of nostalgia had passed for Gully, and he flapped his hand at Mom. Library was on the chopping block even before that head got stolen. No, we're not, said Pearl. We're just, she borrowed a phrase she'd heard Mom and Bruce say, under proposal. Under proposal to be turned into residences, said Gully, pointing his finger at her rudely. And a good idea, too. Why not just close and get out? Let them make the place into something. Restaurants, a little shopping street. But her mother said, what would be great is if an established local businessman like you would send a letter of support for the library to the board. Gully looked like he'd swallowed salt, but Mom had an idea in her teeth and she wasn't going to let go of it. Even if you did suggest development to Mr. Bull and Mr. Dozer. Mom rambled right on, her eyes focused somewhere over Gully's head, as if she didn't even notice that he gulped and blinked and cleared his throat when she said it. A local institution of learning and culture like the Lancaster Avenue Branch Library is an expression of this neighborhood's high values, and you should think about where your store fits into that. She paused. If you want to survive the coming changes, your building is real estate, too. But the threat of becoming the next target for the developers was lost on Gully, who was dashing to the corner where Nichols lingered outside the newsstand, looking at the headlines on the Morning Moon. Hey, paying customers only, keep moving. Mom caught Pearl's arm as she charged forward in pursuit, holding her so tight it hurt. You'll only embarrass Mr. Nichols, Pearl, she said into her ear. Gully came back in, punched the register's keys, and said, stinking bums. Mr. Nichols doesn't stink, and he isn't a bum, said Pearl. He's homeless. Gully spat out the word. Why doesn't he get a job? Why don't you give him one, Pearl said. Mom put a hand on her shoulder. People like that are wrecking this area, said Gully. It's bad for business. Mr. Nichols has as much right to be here as... He's our friend, Mr. Gulliver, Mom interrupted. She hoisted her purse up her shoulder and hauled Pearl out the door, adding, my apologies for my daughter. I don't apologize, said Pearl. Shush, said Mom. They banged out of the store. Francine was lurking in the doorway. Pearl could tell she'd heard the whole thing. Pearl chased after her mother. Your apologies, she cried. I stand up for someone and you apologize for me? Gully is our friend too, Mom said, storming across the street. You have to be polite to him. No, Pearl said. She shook her head all the way up the library steps. Not if he's rude to Mr. Nichols and me. Then you are banned from his store until you can be polite to him, said her mother. Here came Francine. I wouldn't have apologized either, she said, but I'm hardly allowed to talk to him. He's our landlord. Suddenly her eyes widened, and then everyone's anger popped when they saw what Francine was looking at. Francine grabbed Pearl's arm. Those men, she hissed, they're back. Drama. It grabbed people. Mr. Dozer and Mr. Bull were pulling up and parking right on the sidewalk. Sure, maybe they had read about the lost head in the newspaper and found the library themselves, simple as that. But maybe Gully had actively sought out the real estate guys to encourage the idea of the library as a site for repurposing. Or maybe Gully had stolen the head himself to get a story in the paper and bring somebody to the neighborhood to look at the library. He certainly has the motive, thought Pearl. He wanted to get the library sold away, bring in new development, raise rent, and he could have beheaded Vincent. He was strong enough to lift the head. And who else would know when the library staff had locked up and gone home for the night, leaving Vincent vulnerable, just waiting to have her head stolen? Pearl whirled back toward Gully's store. He was standing in the doorway, smiling toward the trucks, nodding. Pearl, said Mom warningly, I think you girls should go. Come to my place, interrupted Francine. We can see the library from there. Go there and nowhere else, ordered Mom. What else could Pearl do? She went.